Hello, my friends. Welcome to the Nope Coach podcast. I'm your host, Suzanne Kohlberg. I'm excited about today's topic. I think I always say that, but this one in particular, I'm welcoming Melissa Crook, and we are chatting about, how do I frame this? I was going to say, making your own seat at the table or making the table bigger. So before we hit record, we're having this chat about how this is a generalization. So don't get all cranky. Some people often do, but in general, women sometimes inadvertently clamber over each other for that one seat at the table. And it can kind of be, for lack of a better word, kind of bitchy. Like if she gets it, then I can't, and this really competitive thing. And it's like, well, why don't we just make the table bigger? Like, I'm thinking about I'm on a tear at the moment with water aerobics. My kids give me so much flack for it. They're like, that's what grandmas do. And I was like, my body feels amazing in the water. Anyway, long story short, when the class books out, they just move the lane ropes back to allow more people in. Now, obviously, there's going to be a point there where the pool cannot hold any more people. I understand that. But instead of being like, okay, well, you just can't come, it's just like we're going to, give the swimming people less space for this 45 minutes by extending the lane ropes back instead of going, well, you can't come today because we haven't got space for you. And I think sometimes it doesn't enter our frame of reference that more than one person can do this, or that if there's an opportunity that you seek and you desire and there literally isn't a space for you, instead of bemoaning the fact that, nobody wants me or nobody invites me, you can just make your own. Like Melissa and I have our own podcasts.
Exactly.
Most things, like, don't take this to the extreme level and decide that you're going to be a scientific experiment, start burring drill holes in people's brains. No, like, be safe. But for most things, if there's an opportunity, a speaking thing, a writing thing, in today's day and age, we are so fortunate that there isn't a middleman, guard dog, host. Like, you need to put your book out to a publisher. You could write some shit, self-publish it on Amazon tomorrow. So, Melissa, where do you want to start with this? Because you were passionate about this as well, making the table, making your own space.
I am. And I love that. And we started this conversation because you and I talk about a lot of the same things. The point is there are things that need to be talked about. We need to be talking about these things with women because they became an issue because nobody was talking about it, or we were told it wasn't polite, or we were told it wasn't our lane or our place or whatever. And we get to a certain point in our life, no. Or even sometimes as younger girls, like I always understood, even growing up, that like, I'm not going to do things this way. This environment that I'm in right now, no, this does not work for me. And I don't believe it. And I'm going to go a different way as soon as I have the freedom to do so. Many of us can be talking about these topics because we're going to appeal to different people in different places. And we honestly, until every woman is feeling healthy and whole and like she can have a voice and that she deserves to have a voice and that she does have healthy boundaries and that she knows it's okay to prioritize her wellness first, because that's how you show up authentically and as your best self for not only yourself, but for everybody else. So this whole thing, knocking yourself out for everybody without taking care of yourself, is a backwards model, and it doesn't serve anybody well. But in doing that so many times, when we're looking for those opportunities, we've been told in a very patriarchal society and culture that goes back hundreds of thousands of years across the world, not just in the US, not just in Australia. I've talked to women in India, in France, in Sweden. I mean, everywhere there's this narrative that has been going on for forever, that there's only so much room for you and you better box and fight and like hell and knock everybody down on the way so you can get that one spot, instead of like, hold on a minute here. What if I brought some other people with me and empowered them to come along too? And what if, like you said, we made a bigger table? Because if we're going to truly change narratives for women in the world, where we do believe that it is okay to take care of ourselves first, and we honestly are talking about that, we're teaching that to our little girls. That is the narrative, that is what is being heard. We're empowering everybody to feel their feelings, boys, girls, everybody. Until those things are happening on the regular across the world, then we need to be having these conversations, and not enough of us can. And let's make room at the table for all of us to do it in our various ways. And it's that's how we change narratives. That's how we stop the views of the limitations that are out there, the untrue narratives that are out there, the stigmas that are out there. Or I mean, and it has to be done as a collective together, one person at a time. It's like sticking your finger in a dam. I mean, it's just not going to hold. You got to have a lot of people coming with you along the way. And my belief is, if you believe you're valuable and worthy of time and space, you're not going to have an insecurity about that. You're going to be comfortable enough in your own skin. You're not going to be threatened by other women. You're going to want to bring them along. It's like, let's all do this together. But you got to start with yourself first, and you got to start taking care of you first, and make sure that you're as healthy as you can be. I mean, and when I talk about healthy, I'm like, your view of yourself, how you talk to yourself, how you take care of yourself, how you show up for yourself. That starts with you. You can't show up healthy for anybody else until you first start showing up healthy for you.
So many things I want to bring attention to there. But firstly, when you said put the finger in the dam, there was a TV show once. I can't think of what the show was, but I can clearly see the image where the person's there and there's a crack in the dam wall. So they kind of like just like put their hand over it, you know, and then there's another one down the bottom. So they're putting their hand there, and there's one over there. So they've got their foot. Next thing, their whole body's just kind of smooshed up against it. And I think, you know, how often do we do that? You might, and then, you know, you get signs from your body. You might be like, oh, got a little niggle or a twinge in my back. We're fine. Shove a bit of deep heat or something on there. Like, you know, if you even go that far, sometimes you just ignore it. And then you just like, oh, something's past due or whatever, you know, oh, I'll get to that. And then you just have all these things. The next thing, you're pushed up against it. And then it's just like, it's just too hard. Even the tiniest task feels too hard. So people zone out and doom scroll on the internet and compare themselves to everyone else's highlight reel, not even their real life. Because are you posting about all these tiny little things? No, you're posting little Johnny's doing amazing. So it's not even real. So
no, it's not.
And sometimes when you post a real thing, like I remember once my son insisted I peel this banana for him. He was much younger at the time. He was like 2 or something. And then he refused to eat it. So it was just starting to turn brown. It was like 15 minutes later. And I was like, I'm going to eat this. I'm not going to waste this. And then he took this massive tantrum. So I took this photo. I was like, tantrum face, you know, when, when he refuses to eat the banana, so you eat it on him. The number of people, are you okay? It's like, it's funny.
Yeah. This is just my life with a 2-year-old.
But the other thing that you mentioned was, you know, the scrabbling the way or the punching, boxing your way to the top. That came to mind is that saying, it's lonely at the top. And it's like, probably because you kind of had to stomp on everyone to get there. And then it's like, you have to defend it because someone else is coming for you. Like the alpha in the werewolf series or something. Obviously I read too much fantasy, but you need to like defend that. And then neither was fun. Punching your way to the top wasn't fun. And then the fear, living in constant fear of it being taken away from you, is not fun. But as you said, instead, bringing people with you, doing it together, but clearly articulating your boundaries, your needs, and allowing people to self-select in and out and not making it mean anything about you.
Yes, it's not personal. So 9 times out of 10, and we all have to work on this. I'm not talking about this because I nailed it. I'm talking about this because I had to figure this out along the way too. Something that somebody says to you or acts in a certain way to you so many times is more about their own journey than you. You might get the brunt of it and you may do something to somebody else, but 9 times out of 10, it really doesn't have anything. There's a bigger story to it. There's a longer story to it. But yeah, that opt in, opt out, and just like opening the doors. Not everybody wants to be a guest on my podcast. Not everybody wants to read the book we released last week. Not everybody wants to hear about what I'm doing or follow me on social media. A lot of my very close family and friends are like, we understand this about you. We know it. We think it's great, but because you practice these things, we do too, and we don't feel like we need the reinforcement, or we've got a different way, way of doing things. It's not personal. They want to see me succeed. They think it's great. I mean, all those things. So yes, exactly. And just like understanding, I'm here for those who need this, who want to hear this, who want to share this. But just because I'm not for everybody doesn't mean I'm doing anything wrong, or there's anything wrong with them, or they don't like me or don't, whatever. It just may not be for them, and that's okay.
I think that's the most powerful piece. Just because I'm not for everybody doesn't mean I'm doing anything
Ah,
wrong. Because I think sometimes, especially
yeah.
when we talk about conditioning and societal conditioning and good girls do
Yes.
this and they, available for everybody else and they are seen and not heard and they don't ask and then whatever. So it's kind of like as soon as you have a dissenting point of view, it doesn't even need to be a disagreement. It's just kind of like,
Yeah.
not everyone has the wherewithal to say, I love that you love that, I'm not interested. And then, oh, okay. Because sometimes people, when they show a no, people make it mean that they don't love me or they don't care. It's like, I love that you love that.
Yeah.
I'm not interested. I just
Yeah.
wish sometimes we
Yeah.
could have more conversations like that because
Yeah.
then life would be so much more freeing. It's like, I love that you love that. It's not my jam, or it's not my jam right now. Because I think sometimes it's like
Right.
seasons. Sometimes you're like, you're all
Yeah.
for this. It's like at the moment, my family, we're on a total Mexican thing, burritos, enchiladas, quesadillas. Eventually, we'll eat it so much we'll be sick of it, and then we'll go on another thing. Then we'll circle back around, give us 3 months or whatever.
Absolutely.
And I think sometimes when we aren't immediately interested,
Mhm.
in someone's thing, that person, if they take it personally, or then they can
Mhm.
be trying to change what it is they're putting out or their offer
Yeah.
to, and you can't please everyone. It's impossible. I
No.
remember saying to someone not that long ago, like, you can't please everyone, you're not chocolate. And she's like, well, I don't like chocolate. Like, it's a case in point. We can't please everyone, you're not oxygen.
Exactly.
You know?
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. I mean, I think that's why it's so important to understand what your values are, understand what you care about. What are those things that light you up? What are those things that and do that thing, engage in that thing, make that part of your life. But that's not everybody's thing. Everybody else has their thing that engages, and they may or may not choose to do that. And it's not, I think so many times as women, we come across this great thing and it works for us. And I'm guilty of the same thing. And my daughters have told me, like, not for me, mom, great for you, not for me. I mean, I've heard that, but you just want everybody to know about. And
You
if
kind of become
everybody,
evangelical about it, and sometimes later you're
exactly,
like,
yes,
oh yeah, that was too much.
it was too much, and it's not my job to save everybody, and it just may not be their thing or their time or whatever, and that's okay. And I think it's just that's okay. But to get to that space, you got to feel okay about you. And if you're not feeling okay about you, if you're feeling like I am judged based on my performance, I'm accepted based on how much I produce, how successful I am. I mean, you know that in your own story. I know that in my own story. And if you're living by those narratives, then those no's feel like a defeat. Those no's feel like you're doing something wrong. If you haven't done the work and that's how you're determining your value, then you're going to be in trouble and you're going to feel very beat up all the time. And it's not till you're going to get to a point, trust me, because I got here, and you don't want to. I don't recommend it. If you don't, stop and do the like, wait a minute, why is that bothering me so much? What is the root of that? Is that based in just an old tired narrative that got thrown at me when I was 8 years old that it's time to move on from? Because it was never really true in the first place, or I just have chosen not to live by it. But it's stopping and asking those questions when you start feeling defensive, when you start feeling like you got to fight, because sometimes as women, we do have to fight. That is a thing. That is a very real thing. But, engage in the why. What's behind it? Is it based in truth? Asking yourself those key questions. I try to every day when I'm journaling, I try to write down how I'm feeling each day. So I know where to meet myself. Like, okay, I've got all these things going on. And I don't believe in good or bad emotions. I believe emotions are clues and to let us know how we're feeling and let us know what's going on, what needs to be processed, what's come up for us. And then it's up to us to parse those out and figure out what they're rooted in. So I really cringe when people say negative emotions or positive emotions. They're emotions, they're clues. Now we can just make them negative or positive based on our experience and narratives and stories that we tell ourselves or that we've been told and chose to believe is truth. But at the end of the day, they're meant to be processed, move through, and give us a clue of things that are going on with us. But we've got to be willing to do that. And we get stuck in these certain spaces, certain emotions, certain things, narratives. And then we start going down this road and we can't figure out how we got there. And so that's where, I came up with like, okay, healthy boundaries. Like you said earlier, somebody's no, just be like, it's just not the season for them. They've got 5, 6 things going on. I'll use an example. I'm going to tell on
That'd be
myself
great.
a little bit here. Last year, a year ago, I was approached from a person that I have a lot of respect for. She has a great network for women. I'd been a guest with her in a couple of different instances, and she asked me to come on and bring on my own show on her internet radio. And was coming off a very hectic time. We lost both my in-laws in 2023. We moved halfway across the country in 2023. And there was a lot of things, a lot of moving parts. And so she approached me about this during a time when I was processing, calculating all this stuff. And in my inner knowing was like, I just don't think you should take on one more thing. We were in the process of editing our book. I mean, there was just a lot happening in my life, but I'm like, oh, this scarcity mindset, it might never come again, or I might not have an opportunity, and it looks too good to be true. And I've got to say yes to this. There might be an opportunity to create some income here and there, all these voices. So despite trusting my inner knowing and trusting that boundary that I'd previously set for myself that I was now violating, that I wasn't going to take on anything else until I got through the book being released, took it on. And I've come to the conclusion a year later, and it was a year agreement, the full year, calendar year of 2024. So I'm in it through the end of December. Came to the conclusion about 3 months in, if not sooner, that why didn't I listen to myself? Why didn't I trust my inner knowing that just because something's good doesn't mean I have to violate my own boundaries and say yes to it? It will either come back around later or it won't. But and it hasn't been all bad. I've gotten on a different platform. I've learned some things that I'm going to continue on my own in 2025 on my own YouTube channel, but it's going to be much less stressful for me. And it's going to be much less stressful for my staff, especially my poor editor. And it's just going to be, and so now this week, I have to tell her I'm not going to continue. And this is going to release after I've had that conversation. So I have to tell her, and like, oh my gosh, even with all the work I've done, oh, she's going to be so disappointed. She's going to have to find somebody else, which is kind of what she was really, really, really persuasive last year, which she kept approaching me. So that's what pulled me in. And that same thing is like making me dread having this conversation that I have to have this week. There's a deadline. But I know that I've got to say no to this. I know it's the right thing to do. There's a sense of relief in even talking about it that I'm just like, oh, thank God. I mean, it was just so much more than I should have taken on. And so that's what we do as women. We see these things and we're afraid to set a boundary. We don't want to disappoint. We're afraid we're going to miss out on something, the scarcity, all of that. Instead of just like, no doesn't mean I think what this woman is doing is a bad thing. I think it's wonderful. And for the people who have the time and capacity for it, it is a great thing for women. And I will continue to support her in any way that I can that doesn't inhibit and hurt me, because I have sacrificed myself to do this year instead of just trusting that I knew myself well enough to know that was going to be a step beyond what I was capable of doing. And I've ended up very frustrated with the quality of work, the time, I mean, also many things, but we do that as women, even after I've done, the work, we do that.
I love that you've shared that, because you're modeling that, even though, both of us boundaries coaches, we teach what we most need to learn so that we can learn it. And
Yes.
that being overcommitted, being, I've never met a shiny object I didn't like. And if someone's like, oh, here's an opportunity, or it's framed really well, or they're a really good salesperson, or, that FOMO thought comes in. Like, if I don't take it now, it won't come back, especially if it's a once in a lifetime offer, or if it's a deep discount, or if it's something else, but it's trusting your own inner knowing. So for like this year, for 2024, I've all but given up social media. I have a static 9 grid on my Instagram, some posts on my Facebook. My focus has been YouTube. I want to grow my YouTube to 1,000 subscribers. And having that very limited frame of reference has been great, because when people have amazing opportunities, like that new thing came up that was school supposed to replace Facebook or whatever, and someone else had Circle, I'm like, these sound wonderful, they sound great, I'm focusing on this. Thank you so much for thinking of me, I really appreciate it, this is my focus. Because otherwise we have little bits of our energy in so many different containers and we can't get traction anywhere, or you get just enough that you're fed by this but not nourished. You've got a crumb.
Exactly. To
And
carry you over barely.
Crumbs keep you hungry. So sometimes saying no to yourself, to your own ability to overcommit, to have a finger in too many pies, to trust that although you haven't seen results from this thing yet, like we're recording this in September, my YouTube's nowhere near the 1,000. So somewhere in the back of my mind, I was like, this could have been a waste, but you also never know. You could be one video away, or if everybody on the thing who's currently there brings a friend, and I often invite them to, I'll reach my 1,000 overnight. So it can happen like this, but often the overnight success is months or years in the making. And we don't see that. We just see, oh, well, they just had this one thing that took off, but then they've also got all this other stuff beforehand. So it's kind of like saying, what are you committed to? What do you have time, availability, capacity for? Like, so coming into 2025, I was telling Melissa before we hit record, and some of you listeners know, my daughter's starting high school. It's different in Australia to overseas. It might be middle school for you guys, but I know that that's going to be a big transition. She's a long way from home. She has to catch more than one bus to get there. So I'm basically taking the first week, I've already scheduled, maybe even the first 2 weeks, to get her in that routine. Also new friends. She has social anxiety. There's a lot here. I'm not going to have the capacity to be doing things, especially new things in that time. Because I think the other thing that many of us women don't factor in is when we are the support person for someone else, our children, our family, or we're a carer, or our friends, or even our clients, after we've done that, what's left for us? So like after I've helped her support her anxiety and her emotions and all that stirred up, I can't just be like, park that, go around my merry way. I need to manage my own emotions and stuff. So, and then if I've taken the time off and it's not as big as I predicted, I could just read a book or something.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, that's such a good point too, of like, what's left for you? We don't ask ourselves that question enough. We just, if we have more, then we're like, well, I got more, I got to give more away. I'm like, no, that's for you. How can you utilize that? Or you don't have to do anything. I mean, I had this crazy epiphany moment about 6 years ago. My husband and I were on our 25th year wedding anniversary. We went to Europe for the first time. We were in Italy, and they'll just plop a sign on the door and said, be back later. I mean, it's just later. It's not even like necessarily a time. We'll be back soon. And I'm like, they just do that, when they're not worried about it. No one's stressed. They're sitting there on the sidewalk having their coffee with a friend, having a siesta, having a beer, or whatever it is, and not worried about. I'm like, what a concept. I mean, no wonder they're healthier than I am. But it was such an epiphany moment too. We have just this sense of urgency sometimes that we've got to be doing ready for the next thing. It's like, what if we just take a breath? I mean, my husband and I are taking a trip next week, and it's really in honor of his mom. And we lost her in 2023, and she's 100% Irish. Had been to Ireland many, many times. She taught our kids Gaelic, the whole 9 yards. And we're going for the first time next week to honor her and learn about my husband's family history, but also just to enjoy Ireland. And for the first time in 2 years, I'm taking nothing with me, no work whatsoever. And I've have a little bit of anxiousness about it, but I also know the power in it. I also know, no, I get to do this. I've been working on building this thing since 2021. This is a good thing. And a good friend of mine, Liz Thomas, we're collaborators on different things. She's the one that kind of first got my attention last spring, is like, when you're doing too many things, people don't know what you want from them. There's too many choices. They don't know what you want from them. And so get back to your home And also, you are just frenetic right now. Take a breath, take a step away, plan a vacation, take some space where you can walk away and just shut it all off for a while. And for me, it's going to be 2 weeks. And, and I've got a great team. And guess what? If everybody forgets to do their job for 2 weeks, the world will not catch on fire. I will just come back and we'll restart it all over again. But no one's burning down. Yeah.
We create the business, but then we don't lean into what we've created. Like this year in 2024, I've had 2-week vacations where I did not take my phone. I took my phone for personal use, but I didn't have my email. I didn't have my computer, didn't have my iPad. I went on a 2-week cruise in New Zealand. I just posted on socials to the stories because I felt like it, and I don't really use socials apart from that. And I did a 2-week trip to the US. And once again, I didn't do anything business related. If you teach people how to treat you and what to expect from you. So if you're like, hey, I'm taking a 2-week vacation, I'm unavailable. And what I learned from my US trip was if I ever do US or Europe or anywhere again, I need an extra week on the end to get over the jet lag when I get back.
Oh my gosh.
It's brutal.
Yeah. I can't imagine. I haven't done Australia yet. My daughter's boyfriend did New Zealand last spring or last fall. And he's much younger than us. And he was just like, oh, that was so much. So yeah, you've got to give yourself time to recover. And for me, I mean, we're coming back on a Thursday and we learned this. I'm not plugging back in till a Monday. I need
at least
3 days.
Any sort of trip, I need 3 days. But if it's a big travel trip like that, I need a week. And it's knowing, it's educating, it's letting people know. And if you want to, there's little things you can do. Like you can put up a autoresponder, I'm unavailable to this date. But like the other day I messaged someone, I bought something on a Kickstarter, like one of those campaign things. And it said it would be delivered in August 2024. And I was thinking, it's September now. So I'll send them an email saying, where's my thing? Politely. And when I hit send on it, the autoresponder thing came back and I kind of loved it. It was like, I generally respond to things, when I feel like it. It was nicely worded, but I quite like it. If you don't hear from me in a month, then reach out again. And I was like, so now I know, like I don't, sometimes, my pet peeve, any sort of DM, people who know me well, it's like, I reserve DMs for memes, jokes, reels. Like I don't do any business by it. And if you read any of my stuff, you'll know. But people DM and then they don't hear from you in like an hour or 2 hours and they suddenly give you like question mark. I think that is the height of rudeness. I don't know you from Adam. It's been an hour. Hello. Unless you're legitimately and giving me, a fortune that I didn't know that I inherited and, whatever, you're not like some scammer. I don't see the urgency. And even then, like the money's just sitting in the bank, it can wait another couple of hours. But like people's audacity to want a response instantly is one of the, like, I don't know. I find it incredible because of that. As you said, the scarcity, miss out. And when people like sign up now or you missed out, sign up now, it's often because they want the validation that their thing is great and well and doing, and it's nothing to do with you.
No, and it's just that unnecessary pressure we put on ourselves. The world and life is going to throw you enough curveballs that do require an instant response. So why do we do, and I'm as guilty as anybody, but why do we do this to ourselves? Do we put this imaginary, and I say imaginary because this unnecessary urgency, this unnecessary hypervigilance that is just, doesn't need to be there.
As you said, the Italian way, put up the sign, be back. My sister worked for quite a long time in Fiji. And when she first went there, they'd be like, oh, it's island time. And she'd be like, okay, but like, when is that? Oh, it's on island time. But like, when will the store be open? Oh, it's island time. And
that's the point.
When she came back, everything was like her whole look at life changed because it's like, oh, it's island time. And the rest of us were like, what is it? What do you mean? But also too, it depends on you as a person, because if you are that laid back and happy, but if you're building a business and you're like, well, why is nobody actually paying me? Well, because I answer everything with island time or I'll get back to you, and you never do. So there's checking and balancing and weighing it out.
Absolutely. Where do you need to be on things?
Yeah, because the thing is, for most people, as I said, I don't respond to DMs. I think they're the dick pics. Unsolicited DMs are dick pics of the social media world. just no. But if people send me an email, honestly, I kind of have a filtering system because so many emails are just copy paste shit that they send to thousands of other people. So most of the time, if you don't actually capture my attention in the first sentence, I don't bother reading it. But then people who are legit will reach out again. They'll be like, oh, I
Right.
said, and then I'll get some detail and then they'll have my attention. Because some of them are easy, like Dear Sir, Madam. Okay, you haven't taken long enough to know that I'm not a dude. I'm not going to read any further. But sometimes it will be, Dear Suzanne, I love your podcast or whatever. So you'll be like, oh my gosh, great. Then you keep reading and like they just change the name and send the same shit to everybody who has a podcast. I ain't got time for this.
Right. Yeah. If you're not going to tell me what it is about it that makes you connect to it within a sentence or two, no. I mean, there's got to be a connect point to it. And in some intentionality behind it.
Yes, and I think we've lost the intentionality. For a lot of things, it's become a numbers game. So let's just make
how many clicks,
a template and copy and paste it. Sometimes we'll change out the names. It'll be Melissa, Suzanne, or whatever. Sometimes it'll be just Dear Sir, Madam, or Hi Friend, or something. And it's kind of like, sometimes it's even written by ChatGPT. Now, I'm not knocking it has its place in everything. But if you haven't gone to the effort to actually write me a message, why should I go to the effort to actually respond?
Yeah. And some connect point, like you found some connection with my work in a way that meant something to you tangibly, that, oh, I think we could do something really meaningful here. I think we could have a meaningful conversation, a meaningful collaboration. I think we could help some people.
Yeah, but the actual connection point, because it's funny, I was telling Melissa before we hit record that I use ChatGPT equivalents called the Underlord to write my show notes because, I don't like doing that shit. And sometimes when people pitch, they've literally written my sentence to me, like they've given me the show note message. I loved how you talked about, and they've given the it's like, though you haven't, you've just copied.
Yeah.
But if someone
you want to look like you actually listened to something when really you just read and copied and pasted.
And I think that's even worse because like the promo for my show is like bite-sized chunks, which is hilarious because now I just talk for however I want to. But for the first year, there were 15-minute episodes. So when they're like, I love how you do daily bite-sized chunks, I'm like, you've just read some unupdated shit because there's not even that anymore. But I think that's that fake connection. I'd much rather you be honest. Hey, I got this thing to sell. You keen? Because that's at least direct.
Get to it. Absolutely. And make because time is precious as well. And time is precious. Boundaries around that time and where you're going to give it and who you're going to give it to. I mean, I think that's another thing women have a problem with. We feel like we got to give our time to everybody. And I tell women all the time, if you're feeling overdrawn, look at your calendar. Where are you giving your time? Who are you giving your time to? There are things you got to do. You got to feed the kids. You got to pick them up from school. You got, there's things you got to pay the bills. There's things you got to do that doesn't matter how much you hate it. You got to do it. But within that realm, that place you're volunteering, that space, or even your workplace and how much you're doing there, how much you're staying longer, how much, you're volunteering for whatever, how much of that is from you and where you really want to give your time and your hours, and how much is not. Where can you ask for help? Asking for help is perfectly fine and
it's
perfectly
gold.
acceptable. And there's nothing wrong with it. It doesn't mean you're weak or incapable. You're not supposed to be superwoman. That's a false model. That's a false narrative. And it's killing women, literally killing women. Like, it's costing us our health, trying to live under that model. And look at where it is that you can create space for. What are those 5 things that nourish you? When is the last time you engaged in any of them? If you can't, or if you can't identify them, you've got to sit down and like, okay, what did used to drive me? What drives me now? What in this moment excites me? Because again, going back to that, time matters, and you're going to feel it. I mean, if you're not pouring your time into things that pour back into you, that fill you up in some way, you're going to look at your life and you're like, why do I feel I should feel more content? I should feel more satisfied, whatever it is. You're probably giving your time away in places that you really aren't feeling connected to. You're doing it out of some random obligation, false obligation that somebody's told you along the way that's not actually connected to you.
You've raised such a great point there. whenever I personally feel a sense of obligation, like whenever that feeling becomes into my awareness, it's like a red flag. Like it's like, pause, let's look at this, because that's one I will no longer do anything out of a sense of obligation for anyone, not even my children, not even my husband, who I love dearly. If I feel obligated, the only exception would be like my daughter's finishing primary school this year, the graduation. Like, I don't enjoy those things. I will be honest. I don't like sitting in a stuffy hall, overcrowded, loud, with people with their screaming kids who don't even have the decency to take them out. You know, see my kid walk the stage for 20 seconds. I can't stand it. I would do that out of a sense of obligation. But beyond,
that's a great example though.
You know,
there's
beyond the big things, somebody getting married, somebody graduating, you know, things that are like very rare occasions. Beyond that, like if they're like, do you want to come watch me play t-ball, and I don't, then I will not. Or I'll be like, I'll come once a term, or like my daughter's just started playing AFL, Aussie Rules football. And I was like, I can't attend every single week because it's on a Friday. I work on Fridays. I was like, I will come to one match a month. So, come up with a thing, because sometimes, as you said, time is our most valuable resource. Time to me is more valuable than money, because I can always get more money. I don't necessarily know how, when, but I can get more. I don't know when my time clocks out. I could get run over by a bus tomorrow. Like, you don't want to be all doom and, but that is a resource that I'm taking that I don't know when it expels. So as soon as I feel obligated, like, and some people live their life on obligation. They're at their kids' every sports match. They're at their sister's this, they're at their brother's that, they're at this. And then they, as you said, they don't even know what it is that they like. Or when they do finally have something and they're excited about it, and they expect everyone else will come because they've always done it. Like, this is it. As soon as I have a checkbox in my head and I'm like, okay, it's my turn now. Where is everyone? And that soul crushing thing, it's like, I could have said no. People having healthy boundaries is often modeled to you, because I didn't have to go to every single AFL match. I didn't have to go to every single thing, but I did on some weird kind of check balance system that the person doesn't even know about. When I was very early in business, I was part of a course, a training, and they were teaching webinars as the style. Like, you run a webinar and you invite people to it, free webinar. And I went to everybody's as the cheerleader, because I know what it's like when you run your first thing. You don't want to, and I remember when it was time and I finally got enough spoons to do my own. It's funny, now I have 400 odd podcasts off the, anyway, I digress. But I was like, okay. And I was expecting all these people to come because I'd been to theirs, but was it ever stated? Did I ever say, hey, like you and I, it's like, hey, you've got a podcast, I got a podcast, let's swap. It was talked about from the get-go. Sometimes we have this implied thing, like people invite me to be on their show. I'm like, oh, thank you so much. And they say, where can I come on yours? It's like, did we discuss this? Sometimes it is, but I think, or people send me a message and go, I left you a review and here's my show. Who are you? Or I posted about you on social media. Now you can post about me. And it's like undiscussed implied consent.
Those uncommunicated expectations. I mean, those uncommunicated expectations, there's so many, those get us in trouble. And it just comes from that communication piece. So many times we talk, we have this martyr complex of like, nobody gives back to me. Did you ever ask them to? And my husband and I had this conversation early on in our marriage where I was like, that was modeled to me growing up. And so he's like, when did you ever communicate to me that you expected that when I came home off a business trip, that take all the time you want. I don't care, but you got to tell me. Like, I don't just know.
It's like, you should just know. And it's like,
exactly.
No.
And just because you do that for me doesn't, if your expectation was to get something back for that, then have that conversation. If it's not just because I feel good about this and I want to do this, so I'm going to support you and I'm not looking for anything in return. If you're looking for something in return, then you got to communicate that, and you can't be upset when it doesn't get reciprocated. And so many times that just comes out of you not having any boundaries. And maybe and other people do.
Or you're not asking, because as you said, you made the point earlier that I'm circling back to now. People don't want to ask because they don't want to be needy, or they don't want to show they can't do it on their own. It's my late mother. My mother passed away last year, but she never asked for anything, and she prided herself on that. And a couple of times when she saw me ask my husband for stuff, she was like, why? You could have done that yourself. I was like, yeah, but I didn't want to. Like,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
I could do
Why
so
can't he
many
do it?
things.
I don't
I
have
can
to do
change a
everything.
car. I can change a car tire. If worse comes to worse, I can do that. But I have roadside assist, not because I'm prissy and don't want to break my nails, but it's because why would I spend hours doing something that somebody trained could do in 5 minutes? And that's what I
Right.
pay them for.
Exactly.
Like, I
Yeah.
could teach my
Yeah.
own children. I totally could, at least primary school and high school.
Yeah.
But I don't want to homeschool. I make the choice for them to go somewhere else. And I think sometimes
Yeah.
it's like I could dig a latrine in my backyard, but I love having a flush and toilet. So,
Well, I think you made such a good distinction there. I can do a lot of things. That doesn't mean I have to, or that doesn't mean I should. I mean, and I think we confuse those, and that it is such a generational thing. There is this like pride flag that's carried. That, look at me, I can do all these things. I'm so independent, and you're exhausted, and you're irritated, and you're mad, and you don't know why. And it's because you never stopped to think that, gosh, maybe I should just take some time for myself instead. Or maybe I should have communicated that expectation rather than just assuming that everyone will respond in kind. I mean, there's just so many things that we do to ourselves as women and stories we tell ourselves.
yeah, well, my daughter, she started doing cheerleading. And anyway, long story short, she goes to lessons every week. It's about 40 minutes from our house. I was like, why do I need to drive there and back every week? So I approached some of the other mums. So we've got this like
Yeah,
carpool system happening, and we've got a
absolutely.
WhatsApp thread. And then if for whatever reason one of the kids is sick or one of the mums can't do it, someone else can step in. It's so good. If there's weeks where I'm
Yeah,
just like, I don't need to be like whatever, I just like, I'm not feeling it this week. Can someone else step
yeah,
in? People will. It's amazing. I think
yes,
sometimes we wait till we're on the bare bones of our ass and we're like
yes,
desperate. And then we
yes,
feel like all these doors are shut in our face. Whereas if we
yeah,
start to ask because we want to, like I've
right.
had a really long day and I'm kind of exhausted and I don't feel like driving 40 minutes with 3 kids in the car asking for McDonald's constantly because I don't know, they're always hungry after that. And
They
here I
are,
am
yes.
with a banana or an apple. No, we don't want that food. Well, you're not very hungry then, are you? So,
Exactly.
but it's kind of like I don't want to, or I
Yeah,
don't feel like it, isn't a
yeah.
cop out,
No. And
and
it's
then,
not selfish. It's not selfish. I think that's another thing.
yeah, because also too, this thing that I'm doing isn't even for me. It's my
Yeah,
kids cheerleading. Like,
yeah,
I think so often
exactly.
people like, oh, it's so selfish to whatever. It's like, is this thing for you? It's like my daughter had state finals last week. And anyway, it's a whole show thing. And at
Yeah.
the end of it, she wasn't happy because they didn't win. And it's okay. You're
Mm,
allowed to be unhappy. But I was
absolutely.
like, did you have fun? Did you enjoy it?
Yeah.
You competed at the Olympic venue. You competed in the state champ. You're second in the state. And I think
Yeah.
sometimes we need that reminder, like for whatever it is we're doing, it doesn't need to be a competition. In business, my business doesn't
Mhm.
always go great. There are days where I'm like, I call it my business period. Happens about once a month. I'm going to quit and stock shelves at the supermarket. But I'm like, I get to set my own hours. If I don't feel like working today, I don't have to. You know?
Yeah. Yeah.
What kind of freedom and flexibility? That's incredible. I can just be like, so like
Yeah.
my kids are going away next week for school holidays. My husband's taking them away. And I'm like, I was to stay home and work. I said, no, I'll stay home, do nothing. I'm gonna have a mumcation at home because I
Absolutely.
can. And then people are like, are you
Exactly.
gonna clean the house? Are you gonna write your next book? And I'm like, no, I'm probably just gonna watch Ted Lasso on repeat and eat lots of ice cream because I can.
Exactly. And I have a choice. And I think that's the other thing too, is we need to reframe and look at, we have choices. It's just, are we willing to make them? Are we willing
Yes.
to speak up for ourselves and make those choices? They're there, they're available. Are we willing to utilize them and know that that's okay? And again, it goes back to what you said earlier. We teach people how to treat us. We teach people how to treat us by how we treat ourselves, by what we say yes and no to. Um, how, I mean, and they will pick up on that. And when and if you're not accustomed to setting boundaries and saying no, you're going to find out real quick who's for you and cares about you as a person and your well-being, and who's just there to get whatever they can get from you. And that can be
Oh.
really, really difficult and disappointing. And I've been there and I understand that. But in the long run, it's better to know that and not have those relationships and things in your life that are just withdrawing all the time. And
Yes, like a bank
yourself,
teller being like an ATM withdrawal. But I love how you said that. When people said to me in the past, oh, it must be nice or nice for some, because I love my solo staycations as mum. My husband takes the kids and whatever. And I used to always justify it, like my son's on the spectrum and all this sort of stuff. And now I'm just like, it is. It's just so funny when people look at me like a fish with their mouth opening and closing, because I'm like, yeah, it is. I love being on my own, in my own space. It's so good. And then that's end of discussion, rather than all the reasons that I deserve this. It's like, you have to earn it or justify it.
Yes, we're the over-explaining champions of the world. Women are the over-explaining champions of the world. And I learned this from my own daughters. And I'll never forget my oldest. This was probably about 10 years ago now. She was in college. And one time I was talking, and she's like, Mom, you don't have to explain it. You don't have to justify it. It's fine. I was like, oh, okay.
How much energy does it save not having to explain? Because also too, a lot of the time people don't care. Like, it's so funny. Sometimes, depending on how well you know me, I honestly say, I can interrupt you just here. I don't care. And as in, like, I don't need this whole thing. Not, I don't care about you. And people who love me, they laugh. Other people are kind of affronted by it. But sometimes it's kind of like, if I'm like, hey, Melissa, can you record this podcast today? And you're like, no, okay, cool. You know, or how about next week or whatever. But, oh, this happened and then my son happened and then my husband this. And I don't care. Like, is this relevant to me? No. So you've just saved me having to read 2 paragraphs or something. It doesn't change the outcome.
Yes, it's so true though. It is so true. And I think, so it's something, you deserve to take care of yourself. It's okay to say no. You don't have to over explain why. If it feels right to you, good, and trust yourself. And it goes back to what I was talking about earlier, when I didn't trust myself. We're not told, we're given this kind of inner knowing, however you believe that it comes from, whether you believe it comes from God, higher power, whatever it is. We are born with an inner knowing. We don't give ourselves enough credit for that. And that's, we don't trust that. We don't listen to that enough. You're going to feel if something's off kilter. And it's so important to pay attention to that and trust that and dig into that a little bit. If it feels uncomfortable to you, or something feels off right, dig a little deeper, go there and trust that. Otherwise, you end up in this, I don't know, you just end up, I've talked to so many women and they end up 45, 50, 55, wherever in there, and they're just wiped out and they can't figure out why. It's like, when did you ever trust your inner knowing? When did you ever trust that voice that was like, or that feeling that was off?
I love how you bring attention to that. Sometimes some people it's a voice, some people it's a feeling, some people it's just see, like, that sense for you that it's like, and you don't need to explain it. Once again, back into the thing, it's like, it's a no from me. For me, often it's a no from me today. You ask me next week, you might get a different answer, which is true. Because now, or sometimes we go the other way. Like, I committed to something recently because it sounded cool, but now I'm like, a lot of stuff's happening right now. I'm actually at capacity, so I'm going to change my yes to a no. Past me never would have done that. It was like, you committed to this, you're obligated to see it through to the end. And it's like, not leaving somebody in the lurch, like not showing up 5 minutes before. That is rude and whatever. But with enough notice, actually canceling things is healthy for all involved. But in speaking of that, we could talk all day. And I was telling Liz before we hit record, my kids today, they have opposite day. So the kids are dressing as teachers and the teachers are dressing at kids because it's early in the morning here. So I've got to get off this call and go and draw a fake mustache. So Melissa, what do you do and where can people find you?
I am the founder and host of the Embracing Layers Network. We have the Feel podcast, the Embracing Layers radio show, and we just released our book, Embracing Layers Unapologetically. And it's a great way to engage with our content with a book in your hand and a book club, journaling, whatever. Go to embracinglayers.com. That's our website. That's where you find all of that information, resources from our guests, blogs about the shows, how to connect with us. I do public speaking. If you want me to come talk to you about these things, I do that, but it's all right there. How to follow us on socials. Go to embracinglayers.com. That's the place to find out how to connect on all of those fronts.
I love it. And I love that your books just come out. So remember, it's funny, on my email warm-up sequence, it's like, I love to read. And then I loved how you replied, I'm releasing a book. And then I went and had a look at it. And I don't keep a lot of physical books anymore because my house would literally explode. And I was like, is it going to be on Kindle? Yeah, sure is. I'm like, got it.
Yep.
So I love that. self-promotion is not, how else would I have known you had a book? If you wrote back and go, oh, I like Sarah J. Maas, which is cool, I do too. But it's like, people don't know unless you tell them. Some people will be like, oh, I can't tell them I have a book. And it's like, yeah, you can. They can always just
why
say,
put
no,
it out
thanks.
there?
You know, why did you write it and publish it and put yourself through the hours of stuff not to tell people, hey, got this thing, you interested? And if they say no, cool. And if they say yes, awesome.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I love that's the other. Yeah. But yeah, that's where to find us and connect with us.
Awesome. Thank you so much for joining me, Melissa. Thank you everyone for tuning in. I'll catch you on the next one. Bye for now.